Right, good afternoon everyone. Welcome to Victoria Falls. It is the middle of winter here, as you can see. We're a breezy 27 degrees Celsius, and it's hardship. We had to wear a jersey this morning.
Yeah, good afternoon to all of you, and welcome to our chat.
So please, as you get online, check in on the comments. Just say who you are and where you're calling from, or where you're commenting from, and we'll be taking comments and questions right the way through our chat this afternoon. So I'm Richard, and this is Jeff Armand, the race director for Victoria Falls World Challenge Pigeon Race. So we've got a few things we want to go through today. We're going to talk about the race on Saturday and what we're expecting out of it in terms of weather conditions and the start of the super race. We're going to talk about the super race competition itself, and we're going to talk about the team competition. Then Jeff's going to run us through a little bit of training and what the birds are going through in terms of training and diet at the moment, and we'll talk about the tracking as well and how that's been going. And we'll be taking questions right the way through. So if you've got questions or comments, we'll be answering or ignoring them, depending on how we're feeling at the time. Welcome, Craig, from France. Hi, Thomas. Good to have you with us. Right. So that's our format for this afternoon. We're going to try go through those 5 or 6 things. The race on Saturday, the super race, team competition, training, and tracking. Jeff, let's get going. Saturday's race, what are you expecting? Let's start with the weather. What's it looking like?
Okay, the weather is very different from last week. Last week we had a cold front that came through, cloudy weather and very strong winds. We're expecting Saturday to be a dramatic change, and in fact there's a bit of headwind in it, mostly no wind, and temperatures rising to about 27 degrees during the day. So much more steady race, and so it's something that we're looking forward
to. Great. Just for the people who aren't au fait or familiar with the race, this race that's coming up is Hotspot 3.
That's right, yeah.
What's the race distance?
It's 318 kilometers, and it's the first leg of our main part of our competition, which comprises of 4 races, being Hotspot 3, 4, 5 and the final, getting progressively further in distance, and traditionally a much more difficult course than what we faced up to now, which has been quite difficult as well.
So 300 kilometers, GF 318 kilometers. Do you expect birds to go down during the race, or they'll be on the wing the whole way through?
Yeah, they should be on the wing the whole way through. You know, the interesting thing is the tracking information that we're getting has been remarkable, because even the pigeons that are taking a long time to come back because they've gone off course, there's no evidence that the birds in the first 4 to 5 hours have actually gone for water. They haven't stopped. So we don't expect them to stop in 300 kilometers. They should come right through.
Okay. I mean, we're in the middle of winter here at the moment. Is there groundwater out there?
We had an exceptionally good rainy season last year. A lot of surface water. So if the birds need water, there's plenty of water about, in water holes.
Jeff, I mean, I'm not a pigeon fancier. I've just been learning from you over the last few years. But my understanding is 27 degrees with no wind, that's about as good as it gets in terms of pigeon racing.
Yeah, I think it should be pretty good, but you don't know what happens on the day, and it's only a prediction of the weather.
Sure.
What we've actually found out is that the wind streams at different levels change quite a lot, different directions, generally the same direction, but certainly the speed of the wind can be quite a lot higher at a couple of thousand feet above ground level, and that's the height that the pigeons fly when the wind is available. There doesn't seem to be any evidence of strong winds at a higher level for Saturday.
We come back to the mystery of pigeon racing. How does a pigeon know that there's higher, better winds up high?
It's difficult to say, but I would guess that the pigeon will continue to fly until it finds it's in a comfortable area. It may be too high as well, and it may drop a bit, but they'll find an altitude which suits them best, and that's the altitude which they will settle at.
Okay. So I mean, one of the big things that we need to focus on, and we're going to keep plugging during this chat, is our Super Ace competition starts on Saturday, which means it's imperative that people activate their birds now.
Yeah, that's right. If they want to be in with a shout at the main prize, which is $600,000, there's an additional top-up of $250 on top of the activation in order to be part of that. And we said last year that we would be punting towards recognizing what we believe to be the best pigeons, and that is this in the Super Ace competition, where we can identify the pigeon that has done the best over a number of races rather than a single race. And the same applies to the team competition, which we started last year. We got it again this year, and it's going to dramatically change next year as well, because that now recognises the best fancier in our view, the one that can have a team of birds that score well over a number of races. And so that's something that we will be focusing on in our next race.
Okay, so let's move on to the Super Ace and the team, but just a reminder to everyone watching and everyone who's going to watch this later: if you haven't activated your main birds or your reserves, and you haven't activated for the Super Ace, this is your last chance. You've got until 7 o'clock on Saturday morning.
That's right.
Jeff?
You know, it would be useful if people could activate a bit earlier than that, because as it is, our admin staff works right through the night activating pigeons, and you know, it puts a lot of pressure on them. Our system won't allow any activations after liberation time. The moment liberation time starts, you can send in a request. It won't happen. The system blocks it. So do it in time if you intend to activate. It isn't actually the last chance to activate. You know, there is a further chance to activate for the final race by Hotspot 5 if people were inclined to wait. But of course the lion's share of all the prize money would have been taken up in the hotspots and in our Super Ace competition. Although the final race still does have a nice pot. Healthy pot, yeah.
Yes. Okay. So get your birds activated quickly. Right, we're gonna move on to the Super Ace and the team competitions, where a lot of our focus has gone to. Why the Super Ace, Jeff? Why are we doing? Why are we changing this format and mixing things up in the pigeon racing fraternity? One Love races have typically always been all the money is on the final.
Yeah, I mean, we've recognised that, and it's our belief, it's certainly my belief, that the best pigeon is one that is consistent and that can show at a number of races, you know, and you find that in lots of organisations in Europe and certainly in Southern Africa as well. There's a lot of emphasis on the pigeon that does well consistently rather than the one that wins a race. There's nothing taking away from the bird that wins a really good race, but it's not the same. And we believe that the most valuable birds, certainly the ones that breeders would want, would be ones that can show that they're consistently there. So that's the main thing on the Super Ace. As I mentioned earlier about the team competition, again, it's the guy that can select a team of birds, not necessarily a lot of birds, you need to be on a level playing field. Everyone has the same opportunities with a smaller team, and you can accumulate points over a series of races. And the guy that has the most points indicates that he is certainly the best fancier in that particular competition.
Yes.
So that's the reasons why we do it, and we will continue to punt that. Next year's Super Ace competition will have 300 prizes on it and a prize pot of $750,000. And the team competition, obviously not as many prizes because it's teams, but certainly it's going to be dramatically increased in terms of the amount of money available. So, I can mention at this point as well that we've taken a sort of people's views on what they would like to see, and that over the most important change that people want to see is more prizes further down the line to give people an opportunity to pick up minor prizes. So we've got over 800 prizes to be won in this coming season. Not this one now, but the one that we will have for next year. So that's quite a substantial number of prizes.
So, I mean, it's important to note that while we are preparing for the final now, we're also preparing the intake for next season. This is a yearling race, which is very rare. There's not many one-off races that run yearling races.
Yeah.
Jeff?
Well, I mean, it's something we decided to do simply because the seasons were not conducive to pigeon racing. Traditional pigeon racing is a January race, which is what's been done around here. Young birds come in and they race, are kept for a few months and then raced in January. We're unlike South Africa. Our temperatures are a lot higher, and it's almost impossible to raise pigeons at that time of the year because torrential rainfall and very, very high temperatures. So if we're going to delay it, we decide to delay it and have a winter race a few months later, and it also gives an opportunity for the birds to go through the molt. All the birds have well molted by that stage. It's prior to the traditional molting period for European pigeons, which comes in sort of September, October, and it's after the southern hemisphere pigeons that are molting in about January, February, March. So we're in the middle of that. The birds look really unbelievable. They're in good condition, and it gives everybody an equal chance. And if you actually look at our results, you'll see that there's quite a number of different countries that come in the top. It's no one is dominating at all. It's if you can have 8 or 9 different countries in the first 10, which is an indication that everyone's got a fair chance.
Yeah, no, that's great. So this year on the current race, let's look at the format of the Super Ace. We started with 7,500 birds this year, and we going into our main Super Ace with just over 4,000 birds. There's 4 races. Do you want to just talk about those races and what we can expect from them?
It's very difficult to predict exactly, but all I can say is that the winds are very variable. You sometimes can get extremely strong crosswinds like we had last week, and that can also be a headwind. We had a situation like last year. We had a very, very strong headwinds on Hotspot 4, which took its toll. But these crosswinds also take their tolls, and it's very interesting to look at satellite tracking results from our trackers, and they tell us actually where the birds are going. I'll talk a little bit more about trackers later, but certainly these birds are flying way off course, and so it's the different conditions will arise each week.
So for the Super Race, I mean, our first race is at 318 kilometers. Where do we go from there?
From there we go to 400 kilometers,
okay,
and then 450, and then the aim is 600. We have to be very careful about the weather. We want day birds. It's not nice to not clock on the day, so we'd have to look at it and make a call.
With the final?
With the final it could be 550, but certainly we're aiming for 600.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so So the point is that there are 4 longer races that will actually test the birds, and that's the principle of the super race.
That's for sure. And you know, no one can take it away from the pigeon. Regardless of whether it's a high wind or headwind, the pigeon still has to be in the front. You know, and you're finding that the birds that have done well in the past, I mean, you take Pebbles, for instance, which was the Super Ace winner last year. It did well when there was a strong wind, and when it had a headwind, it did equally as well. You know, it's the clever pigeons, I believe, that come to the fore.
I see a question here talking about prize positions. What are our prize positions for this year?
120 positions.
In total?
I can't. I'd have to. Karen can answer that.
Okay.
I'll tell you offhand.
Karen can post,
But
tell us
yeah.
what we're on this year, because there's prize positions on the Super Race and on the final and on the hot spots.
Yes. If you add them all together, there's a lot of prizes.
Yes.
You know, you can't take them in isolation,
Yes.
really.
Yes. But we're not looking at 4,000 pigeons with 70 prizes. That's not necessarily a fair view on it.
No.
That's the comment that I'm seeing here.
Yes.
There's more than 70 prizes
No, but
on the current
there's
race.
all the hotspot prizes.
There's
There's
hotspot prizes, and there's prizes on the final as well,
and
which
there's
are
the
outside
grand
that.
average finals. There's all sorts of
Yes.
prizes. Yeah.
Yes. Basically, there's $1.2 million to be won this year.
Yes, 1.25. Yeah.
1.25 million
Yes.
to be won this year, and you expect that to go up next year?
No, we're aiming for about just over 1.5 million.
1.5 next year.
1,550,000
Okay.
is what we're thinking about. It's not finalised yet, but
Okay.
it will be finalised very shortly, and it will be advertised from there.
And that 1.5 will be spread over, you said, 800 positions.
Yes.
800
Different prizes, yeah.
different prizes.
Yeah.
Okay, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about numbers at the moment.
Yeah.
We started with 7,500 birds this year.
Yes.
People can see behind us the loft. There's been a lot of work done on it and extensions made to it. Where are we at in terms of capacity, and what are you going to do for next season?
Yeah, look, I think, you know, every loft has to reach a point where they've got saturation. It was our aim to go to 10,000 pigeons. We have capacity for more than that, but we won't take more than that. We're going to cut it off at 10,000 birds, and it may be that our later intakes might be curtailed. You know, when we get guys wanting to send the last shipment, we may have to say, I'm sorry, we're full. So the intention is to take in a total of 10,000 pigeons. You know, you never end up with 10,000 pigeons in any loft. You get losses in quarantine, get losses in orientation, and then you get them on the road.
Yes.
But we can comfortably handle 10,000 pigeons. We've got the trucks, we have two vehicles, we have got the staff, we have now got a full-time veterinarian on board.
What is our staff complement at the moment, Jeff?
Okay, well, there's 14 people in the loft, and 2 managers in the loft. I'm the race director, but it's everything comes through me as a consultant, consulting basis, and I put my nose in there when I need to. But you know, we've got really competent people on board, and they're well versed on what to do. You know, that's one of the reasons why we have apart from seasons, we like to have people fully employed permanently, rather than take people on for a season and then lay them off and have to retrain people. That doesn't
Yes.
work. And because of our long intake period as well, we have 5 months of intake of pigeons in quarantine. It's a job that keeps us occupied all year.
Yes.
Anyway.
And it's become a small, not such a small family anymore.
No.
I mean, it's always exciting to watch your grandchildren walk around the loft and
Yeah.
they're living here
Yes.
with you, yeah.
Yeah.
And Karen is your daughter. It's great to have this. I see Karen has responded here. This year, for those who aren't watching the comments, the Super Race has 120 prizes. The final's got 120 prizes. There's 100 prizes on the hot spots and 14 on other competitions.
Yeah.
So I make that 454 prizes, 354 prizes for the current year.
Yeah. Some people might say prizes. They talk about cash prizes.
Okay.
And there's 70 cash prizes, but other free entry prizes, which still has a value.
Sure.
And you know, we were thinking of doing away with it, and we had a lot of criticism saying, "Why are you doing away with it? We like that."
Okay.
So some of the prizes that we talk about are free entry prizes, which I think are pretty valuable as well.
So just a reminder to everyone watching: comment in the put your comments in the comment section of the chat. I am watching that, and we'll answer any questions that come up. And don't forget that you need to activate your pigeons for the super race this weekend. Jeff, let's talk about training quickly. How far have the birds flown so far this season? Do you have that number?
Someone will have that number.
They can look it up.
Just to tell you how we do it, we have it's quite a complex system that we have, but it's something that works for us, and it's something we've evolved to and we've learnt. And that is, in the initial stages, we loft fly because you need to do that to orientate the pigeons. But when you've got thousands of pigeons, it's hazardous. You know, you've got birds colliding daily, and you get a lot of injuries like that. We find it far better once we got them orientated to start to take them down the road. So we toss until we start to get the distance. We toss virtually every day. And of course, it's not publicized because you can't be basketing and putting everything on the system every day when it's a 25, 30 or 40 kilometer toss. So we do, in the initial stages, 2 tosses during the week and 1 on the weekend, which are publicized and which we are part of the grand averages. Other than that, we toss them shorter, and we also depends on the condition of the birds. You know, you can have a look at the birds, and there's a few reasons why we do that. The first of which is they need to have exercise. Second of which, we can't loft fly them, so they can't just sit. And these are yearlings, you know, and they've got the hormones are growing wild. If you leave them to sit and don't exercise them, you'll have all the hens getting eggy and so on, and that we don't want. We don't have, there's very few eggs in the loft, and you get them in sections where you've got a bird that's had an injury, it's in a recovery, and it mates up and starts to lay eggs. But other than that, the design of the loft, the design of the perches, the floor is not conducive for them to breed. Although they mate up, they're happy, but they don't actually lay eggs. And the moment you stop that and start locking them up, you're going to find that within a week they're going to be really driving hard and wanting to lay eggs. So that's the reason why we do that, and it works for us. The other thing is flying the birds around the loft. Some of these pigeons fly for hours. Actually, they disappear, they fly for hours, and they're exposed to hawks, they're exposed to wires, and so on. We find we have less losses if we toss them, and they generally come back from a toss and in. If we let them out around the loft, they disappear, and this we've done year on year. They will fly away and come back 2, 3, 4 hours later. And that's
a sign of a good healthy pigeon that
well,
wants to fly.
That's right, but you know, we're exposing them to dangers,
yes.
And no, that we don't want. And the other thing, of course, is if you did that regularly, it would be a magnet for every raptor in the area to say, well, here's somewhere for us to eat.
Yes.
So you know, we keep them from doing that by taking them on the road. There's less danger to them. That.
I mean, it's a good reminder to everyone that we're in the middle of one of the biggest national parks in the world.
Yeah.
Here in Victoria Falls, and we have every type of raptor out there that's looking for something to eat.
The interesting thing is that we do get hawk injuries, but the sheer weight and numbers of pigeons, you're bound to get some injury. But when the pigeons are fit, the hawks find it difficult to catch them.
Yes.
The biggest problem we have, actually, is the birds panicking. You know, when they're flying and you get raptors diving into them, they split up and they panic and they fly in different directions, and some of them battle to find their way home. You know, the clever ones work it out quickly and come back, but the other ones that are not quite with it end up staying out or even getting lost.
So I've got a question here on the time of day that you train the birds. Are you tossing them in the mornings only, or are you giving them some hot weather training as well?
No, we toss them only in the mornings. But as the distance gets down the line, they're going to get exposed to hotter weather anyway.
through the actual longer training
Yeah,
tosses.
the fact that they're going from a further distance. And this time of the year, it's pretty mild weather anyway. It doesn't get really hot, 27, 28 degrees. It's actually really good conditions for the birds.
we brought the race back a few weeks from last year. Last year, the final was actually quite hot.
Yeah, well, it was in the second week of August. This is the last week of July.
Okay.
And the weather really starts to change at the beginning of August, and you start getting strong headwinds, and you start getting temperature rise very, very rapidly. It turns to summer. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Let's talk about the tracking quickly. Maybe Peter can bring us one of the birds, and we can have a good look at. This is one of the tracker birds. So for those of you who haven't met Peter, he's one of our up and coming stars in the loft. Peter, introduce us to.
Yeah, this is one of our tracker birds. We fitted the tracker rings this morning for Saturday's third hotspot. For those of you who don't know how the tracker ring looks, this is the brick that the birds fly around with. It's a battery that fits over the ring. Can we take it off? I just want to confirm there with our cameraman. Are we zoomed in on it? Looks like we're on it. So it clips onto the ring, as you can see there, with the battery on it, and that transmits the signal and pinpoints where it is. If the bird returns, we take the ring back off and get the data from the ring itself, and that gives us a good idea of where the bird has been.
Okay, so just to be clear, the birds that are trackers are not race birds.
No.
They're not competing in the race.
So
They're training birds.
They're not competing in the race. They birds that we've bred and put in the loft, just to give us an idea of what the birds are doing out there. I mean, it's one of the big mysteries in the game is to know what happens since we liberated them till they get to the loft. I mean, there's no one that actually knows what happens, and this gives us a good idea of what is happening in that period of time.
And so, what's the weight penalty that the pigeon is carrying there?
So, if I'm not mistaken, this is about 7 grams extra that a bird needs to carry with it. So they do get used to it, but it has to be a drawback for the bird. Not such that they exhaust themselves in a sense that they can't make it home, but they're definitely not as good as the ones that are not carrying it.
Okay, great. Jeff, what have we learned from the tracking that we've had? Thanks, Peter.
You know, it's actually really, really fascinating. One thing that we know for sure is that we have some pigeons that take a very short route, or the shortest route possible home. Those are the guys that win. And a lot of them go further, 50 kilometers, 30, 40, 50 kilometers further by taking a bit of a detour. And when you look at the data, the birds are flying more or less the same speed as the winning pigeon, but they haven't come straight. So because they're flying, instead of 100 kilometers, they're doing 130 kilometers, they're obviously going to be behind. And, you know, that's one of the things that we found. And the other thing is they aren't necessarily going with the wind. Some birds compensate and fly straight regardless of how strong the wind is. And some even fly into the wind and then turn with a tailwind towards the end and fly in. Some, of course, just go with the flow and they end up going offline. Now, it was like last week we had a pigeon that we commented on a news flash, which did 566 kilometers in its journey home.
In a 200-kilometer toss.
From a 240-kilometer race. And that bird flew directly with the wind at an altitude, I think was 7,800 feet, reaching speeds of 2,200 meters a minute. And after 290 kilometers flying at a tangent, it must have realized that it was in the wrong way, and it dropped down to 100 meters, flew 112 kilometers northward, and then turned at 90 degrees and flew home for the last 100 odd kilometers at the same altitude. Speeds were right down between 600 and 800 meters a minute flying back to the loft. So that's really fascinating as far as I'm concerned. And
Was
the other
was that
thing,
bird on the wing the whole way, Jeff, or it
didn't-
went down?
it went down just before sunset on the first day, and it came in the morning, which we got the tracking thing, but it didn't stop for water, as far as I know. I'd ask our guy that analysed it.
Okay.
But the one thing that people must realise, that bird's not on its own.
Yes.
You know, we have a track. We only have a few trackers, and you must know it's going to be with maybe 100, 200 other birds. And we had other birds with this last week's race that went right past into neighbouring countries. I think the one bird actually visited Namibia, just to the corner of Namibia, so into Zimbabwe, Botswana, Namibia, Zambia, and then came back. So you know,
it had its passport stamped a few times.
yeah. So anyway, it's really interesting, and you know, we still have not analysed everything fully, but we will be analysing and seeing what can we learn from this.
So I see a question from Thomas here asking whether these are trackers or loggers. So the system that we're using is a passive tracking.
Yeah.
That we are recording the tracking information and downloading it once the bird arrives. We don't have any live tracking.
No, not at this stage. It's it's something that's been worked on, and we don't know at this stage if we're gonna get to it. But we're certainly very interested in that concept if we can get it. The biggest problem is the size of the battery.
Yes.
You know, and the weight of the battery that they have to contend with. So that's what the issue is.
Right. So at the moment, how many tracker birds are you running in a typical race, Jeff?
About 30.
Okay.
You know, we started off by only putting a few in because we thought we'd lose all these birds. But as we go along, we found we haven't lost, I mean, touch wood. You know, we still got hotspot this weekend. We haven't lost many trackers at all. How many have we lost, Kevin? 12 trackers from the beginning. And they go on every training toss, every short toss as well, just to give us an idea where the birds are going and what they're doing.
Yes.
And the other very interesting thing that we've found is that they definitely follow landmarks. You know, the pigeons are coming, initially they start from the liberation point and they fan out on some occasions 100 kilometers between the easternmost pigeon and the westernmost pigeon, and in various degrees between that. When they get close to Victoria Falls, they hone in on the falls itself and the gorge below the falls. For about 7 to 10 kilometers below the gorge, they all converge into the gorge and they fly along the gorge, and then they end up at the loft. So it's another thing. It's landmarks is something we know that they're following at this stage. Yeah.
Yes. Sure. Okay, we're going to run through a few questions here, Jeff. The app that we've developed. What can you do on that? Maybe it'd be interesting for people to just have a quick run through on what its capabilities are if they're not using them.
Yeah, you're asking me questions. I don't really use it myself, but I think Kevin, Kev, you know more about the app than I do. Come and talk to us.
Welcome, Kevin. So just a reminder to everyone who joins in, check in on the comments. We'd love to see where you are, and any questions you've got, please put them in there. We'll try and answer them. Yeah, so let's hear from Kevin. Tell us about the app, Kevin.
Hi. So so we've spent a lot of time over the last couple of years developing the app, and as we're currently going, we're still adding more and more to it. But basically, we want a one-stop shop for everybody on your phone, where you can pick up live results of the race, pick up your standings in the various competitions. Obviously, I'm sure we're going to discuss it earlier, the bonus races system that we have going on. So we've tried to make the app a very easy system. So when you log in with your credentials, with your accounts, it's very easy to pick up where your birds are, what they are doing. When you enter into the bonus race section of the app, it's a very simple way of picking up your bird, choosing which bonus race you want to enter your particular bird in, and it's a one click, submit, and you're into your bonus races.
Can you activate pigeons on the app?
Yes, you can.
Okay. And you can make payments directly through the app?
Yes.
Okay. So people who aren't doing that can
Can.
if they want to.
Yes.
They don't have to,
They don't have to.
but
yes.
they can.
Yes.
It's possible to choose which pigeons you're going to activate. You don't have to send an email into Karen to ask her to activate birds on your behalf.
No. So both on our website and our app, all of this now has become available, whereas previously you would have to have sent an email, wait for a response, although our admin girls are really good at responding, but with time differences and that sort of thing, that's now eliminated by the app because everything is live from the click of the button.
So it gives people quite a lot more space, as in we need stuff activated before liberation. We've had people activating birds minutes before liberation, and that's possible.
Yes.
I wouldn't recommend that people leave it that late, but the app can handle it. The app and the website both can handle it.
Yes. Yeah. And then it's automatically programmed within your birds as long as you logged in with your account. Your bird arrives, it'll ping you. Any update from the race, it'll ping you. Any activation change on your bird, it'll notify you.
Okay.
So we've set specific notifications specific to your birds in the race as long as you logged in with your account.
Sorry, I'd add to that as well. It's not, you don't have to get all the notifications. You've got a page where you can select what you want
Which
to hear.
notifications you
Because
want.
some people don't like to get hundreds of notifications,
Yes.
but you can select what you want.
Okay.
So it's not, doesn't become a nuisance.
Great. Kevin, thank you.
Absolute pleasure.
Jeff, a question here. How do you find the difference on the molt between Northern Hemisphere and Southern Hemisphere birds in this yearling race?
The birds take a season or two to actually change the biological clock, I'd like to call it. Traditionally, the birds, their main body molt is before winter. So in the Northern Hemisphere, that's towards the end of the year. And in the Southern Hemisphere, it's like, before the winter months, they will start to do the main body molt. So there's a few months difference between the two. But we found that the birds more or less have sort of settled into the season, and they would have molted January, February, March, and then they go in. And if they haven't clicked into the new system, and they would still only be molting after our race if they're Northern Hemisphere birds, which is September, October time.
So would you say, are there birds in molt currently?
If you look through the birds, you'll find the odd one that's looking a bit scruffy here and there, but very, very few. Generally speaking, they're through the molt.
And in terms of flight feathers, Jeff, where are the birds sitting at the moment?
The birds are through the molt.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So they've got their full wing.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Great. Jeff, let's talk quickly about next year. What are our intake dates and plans?
More or less the same as this last year. The birds arrive with us, one shipment a month, from August through to the beginning of December. If the birds are going into Europe, they go into the Dutch quarantine site a little bit earlier than that. There are dates that have been put out, but it's August through to December, 5 intakes. We try to get the intakes within a week, so we give a week in which to send your birds in that period, otherwise you miss it and go to the next one. Because we can't have birds coming in all times. They've got to come in at given periods, because although our quarantine site has got independent sections, it's so much easier to manage a whole lot of birds, like 2,000 birds, and you get them in, you quarantine them, you have them tested, and when they're clear, we send them out, and then we sterilize the lofts, and then the next intake comes in. But if you get birds coming, when people feel like it, it becomes very difficult to manage, and it delays the release of some pigeons.
So I've got a question here. When you're tossing the birds in their weekly, in the tosses during the week on training, are you tossing them on the same line, or are you tossing them from different directions?
You know, we unfortunately don't have the luxury of a lot of roads in this area. We've got the race route, which goes down
to
towards
Bulawayo.
the southeast, and the other route goes to Botswana, which is along the river.
Heading west.
So the ideal scenario would be to toss them in different points. We do that initially to try and get them to learn to home, and we do it from short distances, but we vary it. But during the week it's online. We don't change that, and we don't let them out in one big group either. We let them in rows at a time. Ideally you let one pigeon out at a time, but we'd be there for a week, just letting out one group. So you let a row of pigeons out at a time. Try and get them to work in smaller groups. I think it helps them with when they do run into trouble, they can work it out a bit easier if they've managed to do it by themselves.
And the fact that you're tossing every day or every second day, do the birds have enough time in the loft?
Yeah, they've got. Well, we don't toss on Sunday and Mondays.
Okay.
And at the moment, Sunday, Monday, and Fridays.
So they're getting rest time. But
Yes.
even when you are tossing, when you're tossing during the week, the distances will vary. It's you're not taking the birds a long distance every
No,
time.
not at all. We have a midweek toss, which is 100 k's, but generally speaking, they're taking an hour and 10,
Okay.
15 minutes
To get
and-
back.
Yeah,
So you're keeping them conditioned and fit,
yes.
and you're not working them too hard.
No. And I mean, we look at the birds. There's individuals that may take a bit of strain, but we have late bird sections. So at a certain time of the day, or certain time after the liberation, we open the late bird sections, and they're free of any birds. Any bird that comes in there, we check them for ailments, for injuries, and their general condition. A lot of birds are late not because there's anything wrong with them, but if they run into an ambush from a raptor, they generally hide. And we've got really thick forests around, teak forest stretching for a couple of 100 kilometers around Victoria Falls. So pigeons sometimes take evasive action to end up in a tree. They might sit there for 3 hours,
Yes.
4 hours. They come back in absolute perfect condition. So that we can look at. When we see a pigeon, you can see one that's been flying hard and needs a rest, or if it's injured. We pick it up in that late bird section.
So I see a question here asking about our final race distance, whether it's going to be 600 kilometers. We've answered that.
Yes.
We'd like to get to 600, but it will depend on conditions on the day.
Yeah, and we want to try. I mean, you can guess it and you can work it out, but it doesn't always work the way we want it. But the intention is to get birds on the day.
Yes.
We
Yes.
we don't want birds on second day.
So it's,
We can
I mean,
avoid it.
it's a good thing for us to go to the next question: is what type of birds should be sent here? This race is designed for day birds.
Yeah, look, people ask me that question when I travel around. They say, what type of birds? Generally speaking, you want birds with stamina. And the ones with the most stamina are pigeons that are long distance, traditionally long distance, long, medium distance day birds, 800 kilometer type pigeons from other parts. But they need to go week in, week out. So you can't have a pigeon that can do once and then can rest for 3 weeks.
Yes.
You need birds with stamina. And, the physical attributes of a pigeon, everyone are experts on what they think they should have. But there's no doubt a pigeon with good conformation is one that will have more the ability to last longer. The shorter races, of course, we found that the bird that flies the shortest route or the straightest route is the one that will win. Doesn't matter about their physical attributes, because at that point in time they haven't really had to spend 5 or 6 hours on the wing. So yeah,
Right.
so the answer to that question, really, bottom line is you need good pigeons. Yeah.
The best pigeon to send is a good pigeon.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
A question here: when we are doing short tosses during the week, are the birds being released together, or are they being released line by line?
Yeah.
'Cause if people are pooling on those tosses,
No, they don't. The tosses that we're pooling on are the 103 kilometer tosses. It's a mass lib.
okay,
We don't. There's only the shorter ones that we will liberate them in small groups.
I've got another question here saying, what are the main lessons learned from GPS? Is it more important the speed of the bird or their navigation? So you did answer that earlier, but let's look at it again.
Just reiterate, I think generally if you look at all the tracking results, most of the birds fly at the same speed. Depends what line they take. I mean, if they go into the wind and they turn, you'll find their speed picks up in the latter part.
Yes.
But it's undoubtedly it's the bird that flies straight.
So the airspeed, what you're saying is the airspeed is very similar.
Oh, yeah.
The ground speed changes according to the air, according to the prevailing wind.
Yes,
But their airspeeds are very very similar. But the birds that do well are the birds that fly straight.
that's correct, yeah.
Okay.
You know, and I think I would advocate the clever pigeons that can fly straight are always going to be the winners. But when it becomes difficult and you've got a lot of time on the wing, if you've got a headwind, for instance, where a 5-hour race becomes a 10-hour race, you're going to find that the birds that don't have the physical attributes will tire and they'll go down.
So even though they might do better in shorter races where they're
Yeah.
flying straight,
Yeah.
they need to have that endurance
So really
for the longer races.
what you want is you want a physically strong pigeon that flies straight.
Yes.
That's right.
You've got a magic formula for that, do you? Jeff, I think we've pretty much covered everything we wanted to. We talk about the way the birds are going to be auctioned after this race season.
Yeah, we've learned that, look, we had a particularly difficult year last year because of a lot of restrictions in movement of livestock because of AI and various other things. COVID played a major role. So I know people are impatient. They buy a bird, they want it. But you know, we have to conform to all the veterinary requirements and the availability of flights. You know, some airlines are just not running. And when they do, they cancel the flight and say, well, we're not going because we don't have enough passengers. So all of this we have to contend with. What we're doing this year is all the birds will be auctioned whilst they're here. So we can do that pretty much quite close to the race.
Okay.
So we'll be able to photograph the birds, we'll catalogue them, we'll do all that, and we'll run our auctions to whichever auction house they go to. That will be done here, and then we'll determine where they go to. There's no point in a pigeon going to the Middle East, going first to America and then get auctioned there, and then going to the Middle East for sake of argument.
So we'll work on the most efficient shipping and logistics routes.
Yes.
Once we know who's paid for that.
Yes,
bird.
and you know, we'll work closely with Pippa, for instance, and iDream Pigeons in the United States, and the auction people in the Middle East as well. We work closely with them, and we'll determine where they want, because there's only certain places we can send birds to. You know, if a guy from some outward, unbelievable place that we haven't heard of orders a bird, he'll have to go to one of the other places and ship from there.
Right.
You know, so that's it. It's probably about 4 different destinations that we'll send the birds to. But I think it will help a lot in cutting the time down.
Okay. Let's talk about the team competition quickly, Jeff. What is the format of our team competition, and what are we proving in it?
Well, the team competition basically is limited to 5 pigeons that have to be activated
Per fancier.
per fancier. So they'll choose 5 pigeons, and then those pigeons' points accumulate over a series of races, and at the end, the one with the most points is the team competition winner. We will change that format slightly next year, and that will be announced later. But we'll expand it a bit, and we'll certainly we'll have 5 times more prize money on that particular competition.
On the team competition.
Yeah.
Okay. So it gives a chance for a small fancier to compete against a larger fancier on a level playing field.
Yeah, I think it certainly would help to do that. Yes.
It's going to be about bird selection, not necessarily bird numbers.
That's right. Yeah.
That's,
regardless of how many birds are sent by an individual, they still have to be good. You know, some guys can send 100 birds, but they sometimes maybe they send a lot and they might have 5 or 6 good ones. You find the small guy is really, really hard on his selection. He makes sure he's sending from proven stock and so on. So I think they've still got just as much chance as the big time flyers as well.
Yes, yes. So I see a question here on the COVID restrictions in Zimbabwe at the moment. There's been new COVID restrictions coming in, which is why we've changed our plan for the final. But basically, you need a negative test to come into the country within 48 hours of arriving in Zimbabwe. And hotels are open, and you can eat in your hotel, but you can't eat out in restaurants outside of your hotel, unfortunately. Public gatherings are banned, so there's no churches running and no get-togethers. All bars are closed. So it's a little bit of a dismal time to be coming out to visit Zimbabwe, but at the same time, the weather is beautiful. There's lots of wildlife. We had a lion kill this last weekend that we witnessed in the park 10 kilometers from here. So it's still a beautiful place to visit, and we will still make people very welcome if they do manage to make it through.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, it's the flights. There's no restriction on the flights, just a negative test, and then you can still visit whatever you want to visit, but you just can't go in a whole crowd. That's what the law basically says. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, and the other thing that's worth mentioning is Victoria Falls being an important tourist destination. The entire population has been vaccinated twice.
Yes.
So the incidences of COVID I don't know of any anyway. So that's one good thing.
Great. Jeff, in terms of tossing birds later in the day, we're coming back to that question. When it's hotter, one of the things you've always told me is there's much more raptor activity later in the day, and we're trying to protect the birds from that.
Yeah, there's two particular species that are very troublesome, and that's the Ayers hawk eagle and the African hawk eagle, which use thermals to climb, and after about 9 o'clock in the morning, 9 to 9:30, they're on the hunt, and they specks in the sky. They're so high, and they're persistent. They dive, and if they miss, they'll go up again, and they keep going. So we try and avoid that. That's one of the reasons.
Okay.
And there are some pluses to fly in the afternoon as well, but most raptors, if they're going to eat something, they eat it. They've had a meal by lunchtime, maybe, be lucky. But as I said before, the hawks find it difficult to catch a pigeon. They really ambush them more than anything else, And when they're flying through an area that has raptors, if that hawk is sitting in a tree, there's no chance he's going to catch it. He's got to be in position, at an altitude before he's got a chance to catch a pigeon. Because they're gone in a second. They come over your head and they're gone. So yeah.
Okay, any last comments, Jeff? We're looking forward to the race on Saturday. We've had, within the last, about an hour ago when we got our last update, we've had 1,242 birds activated for the Super Ace, which is great. Which means there's going to be a nice big field to prove the best birds on that. But that's not over. There's still time to activate. There's still time to activate pigeons.
Well, we will have the basketing list by lunchtime tomorrow.
Okay.
And I think a lot of people, from what we hear, they're waiting to make a last-minute decision. They want to make sure their pigeon is still there and hasn't gone missing on a in-between training toss or something. But even if they did, they get a full refund if they activate and it's not there. We just, we cancel that activation and it's back in the account.
Yes.
But we don't think there's many missing if there are any.
Yes. Okay.
So yeah, so that's what a lot of people are waiting for the last minute. I think.
Yes.
I hope there's going to be quite a few more.
Great. So a reminder to everyone: activate your pigeons, activate your reserves, activate for the Super Ace. There's $1.25 million of prize money, and there's some really fantastic pigeons that your birds are going to be competing against this year. Everyone loves to tell the story of the fish they almost caught and the race they almost won.
Yeah.
Don't be that person. Make sure you win the race. If your birds are up to it, they need to be in the race.
Yeah. Sure.
So any last final comments, Jeff, before we close off here?
All I can say is we really appreciate all the support that we get from everybody. We will continue to try and improve our race. We always welcome comments and suggestions. Our website is developed. It's really growing. It's been developed and tweaked daily, actually, and so we're trying to make it more and more user friendly for our customers and also for us. It's a lot easier now to work with the administration staff with things that at a press of a button a lot of things can be done. So yeah, and then good luck.
So best of luck to everyone, and that's all from us in Victoria Falls.